In the dead of night, when the moon is high and ill winds blow, and the banshees cry and the moonlight casts an unearthly glow, arise, my love, with tales of woe.
Good evening. It is 12 midnight, the paranormal hour. Welcome to Ghost to Ghost. I'm your host, Chief Lawson. Ghost to Ghost is a podcast to discuss all paranormal and parapsychology subjects. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats, so tell your friends, tell your family. Come listen to Ghost to Ghost. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, our topic is Mirror, Mirror on the Wall and in the Hall. Tonight's guests are Jennifer Verne, our research manager and podcast producer.
Good evening.
And Heather Lawson, our case manager and podcast director.
Hello.
It's Mirror, Mirror on the Wall and in the Hall. Jennifer, how many mirrors do you have in your house?
Other than the obligatory mirrors that come with the house in the bathrooms, I only have one, and there's a reason.
Ah, you want to tell that yet, or you want to leave for later?
We'll wait for later.
Okay, fair enough. Heather, how many mirrors do we have in this house, other than the mirror in question? You thought about that? I actually went through and counted.
We have two extra, don't we? One in the hall and one in the bedroom.
We got two in the bedroom, in our bedroom.
We have two in the bedroom?
Mm-hmm. Your jewelry box is one, and then the mirror on the thing. Then we have one in the hallway. So as I got counting, I found it fascinating how many mirrors we actually have that you don't know about. So actually, there's a mirror in the hallway inside. This mirror's in the office, but you got a mirror in the hall. So there's three there, two in the bathrooms. That makes five. And so, it's just funny. If you get thinking about how many mirrors somebody has in their house, you never really think about it. I mean, of course, like you said, the ones in the bathroom, those always come with the program.
Those are obligatory, and you can't get rid of them no matter how much you may want to.
Exactly. So,
well, you could.
But it just...
Yeah. You could.
Yeah, that'd make your guests wonder, wouldn't it? Just, I always said if I wanted to have a nice, funny effect, I'd put one of those gag mirrors in the guest bathroom where, somebody could...
Funland mirrors that are,
There's so much temptation.
Turn into like a skeleton, like the Helen
mirrors.
Yes.
One of the greatest illusions, and this was done with mirrors. There's a little place, and I don't know if it's still there or not after the last hurricane, but near Pine Island, there's an area called Sanibel and Captiva down in Florida, and they have a place called the Green Flash, and it's kind of it's a little hole-in-the-wall restaurant. It's one of the best Reubens you ever ate. And I used to go over there with a gentleman who I consider my stepfather, and he's passed away now. And we used to go over by boat, pull up. And when you went into the restaurant, though, in the men's room, where the urinal wall is, they had glass windows right above the urinal, and the bartenders would come over and look over. The thing is, it's a two-way glass. They can't see anything, but they would do it whenever they seen someone going into the bathroom. They would come over, and and apparently, somehow or another, they had a sensor there where they could tell which urinal you were at. I found this out because it lights a little light, and they would come over and look like they're looking over at you. And you would, you look, and you're wondering, but actually, the waitresses can't see anything. It's a gag. It's one of the greatest gags I ever saw in my life, but it was a neat little place, and like I said, it had wonderful sandwiches called the Green Flash was the name of it. I always got a kick out of that, and my stepfather told me, he says, oh yeah, he says, you're gonna love this when you go to the bathroom. And I thought, that's kind of creepy, and
you're gonna love this.
Yeah, I'm thinking, what the hell is he talking? And we get in there, and there's this big window, and I'm looking out and seeing all the bar patrons, and you actually go down a little bit in the bathroom, so it was perfect because the women are up higher. And I looked at it and I go, is that legal? And he goes, well, in Vegas and Florida, yeah. And we just kind of went in, and I had no clue, but it was so funny. So, mirrors are used for a lot of things, and we really don't, think much about it this day and age, unless you're a magician or, oddly enough, something I wanted to bring up before we get too far along. I was thinking the other day, and I never did get a chance. I know 3 or 4 funeral directors, and I wished I'd made a call, but I got thinking the other day, if you think most funeral parlors do not have mirrors other than what's in the bathroom. Have you ever thought about that? Now, I'm sure there's some that do, but all the ones I'm thinking of I've been at, I don't remember ever seeing mirrors anywhere.
I can't say I've ever paid attention, but now I'll be paying attention.
Well, I just wonder if that has something to do with some of the superstitions or
maybe
religious beliefs. So maybe. I'm just, just a thought thrown out there. So mirrors, a lot of things about myths and superstitions involved in beliefs of mirrors. Mirrors display both truth and illusion, it is said. It is said that mirrors do not lie. And yeah, when we get up every morning, we look in that mirror, I look and go, who the hell is this old guy and where did he come from? Yeah, mirrors do not lie. So, in Corinthians, in the Christian Bible 13:12, it says, "For now we see through a glass darkly." In fact, there's a phobia known as estrophobia, and then there's also a phobia called spectrophobia. Spectrophobia has to do with fear of seeing ghosts, which I never knew. Yeah, spectrophobia. I had never seen that before. The estrophobia, it refers to extreme fear of seeing your own reflection in the mirror. Something to ponder on. I'm thinking, what kind of person, is that scared to see their own reflection? It kind of brings back to the Dorian Gray story with the painting, but I mean, it doesn't,
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. My second wife was probably in that category. Anyway, so other things that, other superstitions, broken mirrors. That's one that, while I was researching, I found a lot about into. It's bad luck to have a broken mirror in your home. Breaking a mirror, of course, we all know that's
7 years
7
bad
years bad
luck.
Yeah,
but does that compound? So, like, if you break 2 mirrors, is it 14, or is it like same incident? You only get 7.
Makes you wonder.
One.
Yeah.
It's just
One incident.
Now, I've never broken windows, but we did break a couple glass panes one time inadvertently. And it all started with trying to remove a pole out of a room, and, that's always a comedy act. So, did you know there's a remedy to get rid of the bad luck for breaking a mirror?
Oh.
I didn't know this till I got studying. There's actually a remedy. If you take the broken piece from there and you touch a tombstone, and you have to take a shard, and you have to hit the shard with the shard, you have to hit the tombstone 7 times against the tombstone, and that releases the bad luck.
Wow.
So
that's interesting.
I never had heard that before. I always heard that, we've all heard the 7 years bad luck for breaking mirrors. And, but that was just kind of interesting,
But why do you have the 7 years bad luck?
I
Where did that come from?
I never could find that out. That's the weird thing. I would love to know that. If there's any listeners out there that know that, please post that and let us know. I mean, I couldn't find it. I actually looked. Everybody talks about it, and actually, I traced it back to Greek mythology.
Okay.
But they didn't say why it was 7 years.
Wow.
It's just like a random number they picked, and you never know. I mean, it's just kind of funny.
I know in numerology, 7 is a rather important number.
Yeah,
correct?
3, 5. Well, in Freemasonry, 3, 5, and 7 are very important numbers.
Right.
We were watching something the other day, I and Heather, and they talked about magical numbers and 3, 5, and 7, and of course that's
the curse of Oak Island.
Yeah, the curse of Oak Island. Yeah.
7 must die.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love. The thing is, it's kind of like watching a train wreck, watching Oak Island.
Oh, you can't stop.
No. And every year they never find. They get a little closer,
anything.
but they don't find the payload. And,
Right.
and I have buddies who go, "Oh, this year's the year. They're going to get it this year."
Well,
and then,
spoiler alert.
Yeah.
This year, the very last minute of the very last show of the season, what is Gary Drayton find but a non-ferrous hit right there in that.
In that pit, the floor of the gardener pit, they're going down.
Yeah, the garden shaft.
Yeah, the garden shaft. Yeah.
And then that's it. And now we gotta wait.
Oh yeah, they love doing that
because they shut down the dig on that day, right?
Yeah.
Winter's coming.
And then on top of that, once the Canadian government finds out, I guarantee you they're going to stick their hand in. And it's going to become they're going to have to have more archaeology on scene and everything else. But I love Gary Drayton. We and Heather both
so fun.
Oh my God, he's such a fun guy to watch but we always it's one of those things. But there's another superstition that newborn children under the age of 1 year should not see themselves in the mirror.
Wow.
Oops.
And
Oops.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's what happened with a couple of them. I don't know. Anyway, they until they reach age 1, they're not supposed to see themselves. So the other thing that kind of interesting. I mean, how many times have you gotten in a mirror and looked up and thought you might have saw something behind you or something shifting that you might not be alone? Have you ever had that happen?
Well, yeah.
Why do you think there's only one extra mirror in my house?
Yeah, there you go. Well, it happens more frequently. When I got researching this, it was a lot of stories, personal accounts of people that had seen things in the mirror. I thought that was kind of interesting. According to legend, they have hidden powers which can be harnessed by their owners. So if you own the mirror, kind of like owning the genie's bottle, the gin, you have some power over them. Infernal legends say that the Pandorium, the capital of hell, or Oculius Inferorum, is, and I probably pronounced that totally wrong, is located in the all-seeing eye, which can show anything from earth, hell, or heavens, regardless of whether it is from the past, present, or future. And this all-seeing eye is supposed to be a mirror. Now, in Freemasonry, all-seeing eye represents the grand architect of the universe. But in this case, it was actually put into Greek mythology. So the ancient Romans saw the mirror as a reflection of the soul, and they felt that the mirror could trap you if you looked and gazed in it for too long. So, something of interest.
Well, that ties into, I see a little thing down here where you're talking about feng shui.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason feng shui does not have your mirror facing your bed. Because when you're sleeping,
Your soul
the theory
leaves your
is
body.
your soul leaves your body, and it gets confused as to which is the real body, and you can lose your soul into the mirror.
See, it never said why feng shui did
That's
that. So
why.
there it is.
And the
Okay.
other thing in Japanese culture is when you pass away, you never take a deceased person's
Cross the body, yeah,
past a mirror,
Yep,
because
yep.
it will
It will
leave
capture
the
their
body.
soul.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That has a lot to do with, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but with draping mirrors. A lot of people did that so the soul didn't get confused and it would move on. So German Dutch cultures, they've got a more eerie belief. If you saw the reflection after a loved one has passed, this was an omen that you would be the next to pass. So, they covered it not only for the soul,
But for your own soul.
safety. Yeah, it's
Okay.
kind of a safety thing. Covering the mirrors helped them pass with ease, so there's no, confusion. Victorians were really big into this. Of course, that was during the spiritualist age, and, so they would buy as much black cloth as they could afford, cover all the mirrors, and they covered other things, too, other reflective surfaces. If you had a baby grand piano and it was too reflective, it got covered,
Right.
because they were that fear that spirit wouldn't move through. So, and
Many Mexican households still cover mirrors.
do they?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
I didn't know
interesting.
that. So, now is it only the household that has the past?
The loved one.
The
that-
one. Okay, that's why I
passed.
thought. Yeah, that's interesting because I didn't know that either. And of course, the big one we all know: vampires. Can't see the reflection. That's which I think.
But you
one-
have to have a soul to have a
That's
reflection.
right. That's right. Because that goes back to the belief that the mirror is the entrance to the soul.
Right.
And that's that does have a lot to say. And in the intelligence community, when you're interrogating someone, they always have you lock eye contact, and the reason why is that is a passageway to the soul. Once you do that, it intimidates the other individual, and they're more apt to open up and give you more truthful statements. Of course, unless they're trained to evade that. And so anyway, for protection, Buddhists place small mirrors at the entrance which of their homes, which have the role of capturing evil spirits wanting to enter their house.
Oh,
So I thought that was kind of interesting. Because, if you look at Buddha temples, they do have, on the entrance, they have a bunch of little bitty mirrors on the side. I just thought they were decorative, but apparently they actually serve a purpose. So, another thing, when a mirror falls off the wall, seemingly without any cause, the trapped spirit within it is attempting to escape. And that's a sign that there's something in the mirror that wants out. And during lightning storms, these it says in order that these captive spirits not escape, when a lightning or thunderstorm takes place outside, mirrors which are known to be haunted must be covered in order to avoid ghosts escaping. So the lightning flash or the kinetic energy the thunderstorm produces apparently allows them passage that they can come and go. So, but
That extra energy.
yeah, I thought that. Well, we've been on investigations before where, we've had thunderstorms that had more activity because of this high static content in the air. Kind of positively charges the universe. One of the big ones they got, and I remember this from my children, which mine and Heather's children are mostly grown. The youngest, together we have 8 kids, and the youngest one is, 14 now? 13, 14?
Going on
Yeah,
14.
something like that. Anyway, and I remember when my daughter had sleepovers and they do the Bloody Mary routine. And I remember getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning because I remember a bunch of girls cackling in the bathroom and making noise. And I get up and I walk out and I look at my daughter and go, "What are you doing? And why are you all in the bathroom together?" And she goes, "We're looking for Bloody Mary." I go, "Who?" And, she says, "Bloody Mary. You look in the mirror and you say her name 3 times and she appears." And I told her, I said, "There's nothing in this house meaner than me. Go back to bed." I said, "If anything appears, I'll shoot it." And, it just, but this is something kids love to do.
I used to do that at sleepovers when I was a kid.
Sure, I think.
Did you do that, Jen?
Why do you think there's only one here?
She's like, yes.
Goes
yes,
back to that reasoning.
Yep, and then we can hit that here in a minute.
Well, I did a little delving, and I did this some time ago. I did this because when we bring people on the spirit, they're required to go through kind of a boot camp, and it's a long draw, and everybody can tell you.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's a overload of information, but it's training. And one thing we covered was Bloody Mary, and I always thought this just to be folk legend, folklore, urban legend. Actually, it's based on a true story. Now, when I say that, that's loosely based because nobody knows where it happened at. But Bloody Mary, her actual name was Mary Worth, and she was actually thought to be a witch. I believe this occurred probably during Salem times. I'm assuming, again, because I don't know, that maybe it took place in New England. But anyway, she lived outside the town in the woods in a small cabin, kind of a spinster woman. She did a lot of herbal remedies and so forth. And a lot of the people that were very tight with a Protestant preacher felt that, she was practicing Wicca and discouraged them from using it. But over a period of time, several events led to her death. And one of them was there was 3 girls that disappeared in the woods and never came back. And then there was an incident where someone else got sick and they thought she'd placed a hex. Now, again, they never had any kind of proof. The last thing that happened was apparently this girl went off in a trance heading for the woods, and they claimed they could see Mary standing there with a wand that lit up unearthly on the end, and she was calling her. And of course, the girl went to the edge of the forest, woke up out of this trance and returned. But either way, it ended up getting Mary Worth burned at the stake as a witch. So that's where the story actually came from, and I didn't realize there was backstory to this. So now whether or not that actually happened, well, we don't have any proof.
We don't have any proof because it's folk legend. But
yeah, exactly. And that could still go back to urban legend, but at least there's a bit more than just some crazy lady covered in blood showing. And they claim the reason that she's covered in blood is that they beat her badly and drug her to the stake where they burnt her, and that's why she's bleeding.
Well,
so
she probably fought.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I didn't realize is if you call her and she appears, she's obligated to answer some questions. Oh. And it's said that you should never look at her directly, but only through the mirror. And that way you avoid harm. Because if you look at her directly, then, which, I don't know if she appears in form the way this is kind of alluding, but essentially she has to answer any question while you stand there till you release her. And she will ask at the end of each question if she's released. And if you release her, she'll go back. But if not, she has to answer questions about the future, the present, the past, and she has to answer them correctly. She is beheld and betrothed to do that. So
wow, interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of more I dug into that. Like I said, this is, as you were talking with the Jen broadcast we done, it's kind of a rabbit hole. The more I went down it, the deeper it became.
Well, yeah, and Supernatural TV series delved into the Bloody Mary in their season 1.
Really?
Yes.
See, I've never seen any of that.
Season 1, I think, is
actually kind of the best.
It's kind of the best because it's got all the old folk legends, Hookman,
the
Bloody Mary, the Wendigo, and all that. So I had never watched the series, and my brother always told me, "You'll love it, you'd love it." No, So come COVID time, 2020, right?
Yeah.
I've got nothing to do, so I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So I'm watching these first few episodes, and I'm getting terrified. The Wendigo was up. Hookman was really good.
They were kind of
really
scary.
good. And then the Bloody Mary episode came on, and I'm in my room up at night watching this, and I am screeching in terror. Okay, and I texted my brother, so why the blazes, I didn't use that word, did you tell me to watch this show? Because I am now terrified. Yeah. And he was just laughing and cackling, but I really like their presentation of the Bloody Mary story because they put it on a murder victim from Fort Wayne, Indiana, called Mary. And she had scribbled on the mirror the name of her killer, but didn't make it all the way, so her murder was unsolved. So in that story, if you had a guilty conscience and were keeping a secret,
Yes.
and you said Bloody Mary, and she would appear and then murder you because you were sinful.
Ah.
And so in the end, again, spoiler alerts, but I mean, the show is 20 years old, so if you haven't seen
especially
it,
season 1.
it's on you, right? That's from 2005.
Now, does that take place mostly in Indiana?
No, it's
No.
all over.
I know
Mostly
Stranger
Midwest.
Things.
It's mostly Midwest.
Mostly,
Okay,
but
okay.
it's all over. But it was very, very good. But in the end, they used the reflection back on her because she has now been murdering all these people.
Yes.
So now she has a guilty conscience. So,
Yeah.
and in that, they broke almost every single mirror in that antique shop.
Wow.
And so if you got
I'm going to have
7
to
years,
watch that. I have
It's
not
really-
watched that series.
it's really a fun
Well,
series.
Heather drug out Stranger Things, and we watched it. I think it was just right post-COVID because I'd never seen that. And then, of course, same time, the new series, the new season came out, the kids older. So we got to see it all the way
Yeah.
through. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And I liked it pretty well. I'm a big Doctor Who fan. I didn't used to be. I used to hate Doctor Who, and when I was, 10, 20 years ago. But I got I love the old ones. We watch a lot of the 1960s, the first, second Doctor, third Doctor. And I love some of the old Doctor Who's. But I'll have to drag that one out. That's a good one to watch.
Yeah, it is. But the reason it scared me so is because
Yeah.
when I was a kid, I went and I did the Bloody Mary thing.
Uh-huh.
We didn't have friends over, but I was like, I'm going to try this thing. So go in the bathroom alone.
Oh,
You can't
dear.
have multiple girls in the bathroom with you.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. You have to turn the light out, say her name in the mirror 3 times. I think I had a candle lit too, which probably
Well, yeah.
made this whole thing worse.
Helps to
right?
help set the scene. yeah.
Exactly. And so by the third Bloody Mary, it's like, holy cow, there is somebody behind me. Okay, that's it. Light on, out the bathroom door. To this day, that's why I don't have mirrors in my house.
Yeah.
I don't like mirrors.
Yeah.
Even the mirrors in my bathroom, like at night, if I'm in the bathroom and whatever, I'll shut the light off, but my eyes will go down to the floor and I walk out the door. I never look in a mirror in the dark, ever. But it's probably got to do with the Caputo effect.
Oh, yes. Now, that could be.
The
yeah,
Caputo effect is more like a pareidolia
Yeah.
in the dark when your eyes are trying to see what's going on. Your imagination takes over and creates images.
Unlike matrixing, it's whatever you think it's going to produce.
Whatever you
Yeah.
think is
Yeah.
going to produce,
That's
your mind
the
is
thing
going
with the
to
Caputo
produce
effect. And I mean, well, and I'll tell you, there's another part of this story, too, the Bloody Mary story. It indicated some versions of it, the farmer of the daughter, the dad, he shoots her with silver bullets. And I want you to know, of course, I make fun of Walmart all the time because I don't shop there. But anyway, not unless I have to. But anyway, the only place I could find silver bullets, you're going to love this, was online at Walmart.
Yeah.
And that somehow has irony all its own. That, yes, you can get George Foreman Grill, a Bubba, Budweiser tap, and, we don't do Budweiser anymore, whatever tap they have. And you can get silver bullets. I mean, so when you're out fishing, it kills the werewolves. I swear to God to you, I almost ordered them just so I say I had some.
silver bullets.
Yeah, they only had them like 3 calibers, 45, 308 rifle, and something else. And I thought, you gotta be kidding me. But yeah, they actually produce, and they told how many grains of silver that are in it. And I'm wondering how many people buy those. If you ever bought silver
Enough
bullets.
to keep them in stock.
Yeah, obviously.
Maybe the same one who called us for a Bigfoot hunting license.
Oh, yeah, could be. Yeah. I wonder if he ever bagged
I
anything.
wonder if you got tags for
I wonder if
those.
DNR is still pissed at us. But anyway, yeah. I'm sure they had a fun time with him. All right, well, I tell you, the more I delved in this thing, I found a ton of religious beliefs too, and they are entangled. Now, some of the, I think, superstitions and myths come from some of the derivatives of some of the religious beliefs. In voodoo, which actually, believe it or not, folks, voodoo, hoodoo, and Santorini are religions. They are considered religions.
Yep.
In voodoo, placing a mirror in the kitchen would help with feeding the ghosts because of their ability to consume the food reflected in the mirror, leaving them satisfied. So they, I never heard that. Yeah, I never had heard that. And I've studied quite a bit of voodoo and hoodoo, and honest to God, I had not. That's the first time I'd heard of that. And we talked about the Chinese culture about not taking the body out by the mirror. That's certainly. And then there was. many people used it as a form of deviation, or divination rather, and they could look in the mirror through scrying. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yes, you are.
Scrying, yeah.
Scrying, yeah, that's the way I've always pronounced it. That that they can look in there. Nostradamus was one that made this famous. He used a black mirror, and everybody goes, "Well, where do you get a black mirror?" It was probably Obsidian that they polished to no end to make it, or it could be some of the ones they used mercury and iron in the back. They actually would turn black with age.
Maybe, yeah.
So, but they actually sold
Nowadays, it's
scrying
probably
mirrors.
just glass with black painted on
Yeah,
the
and
back.
I mean a lot of times
Yeah.
they use water too. I mean, in
a bowl
Yeah.
painted black.
being a
Right,
being a Knight
right.
Templar, I can tell you that everybody always says, it's such a secret ritual. I got news for you. They make all knights the same way. If you watch Kingdom of Heaven, spoiler alert, that is a very unhistorical movie. It's got a lot of problems. But in those who like Orlando Bloom, it has a lot of Orlando Bloom in it. But yeah, that's not what happened. Anyway, I mean, there's historically inaccurate as all get out. But most Templars would keep a chamber of reflection where they could go meditate, and it would contain several artifacts. And people look at this and go, "Oh my God, they're practicing witchcraft," And we talked about it with Solomon's seal, and so forth. And they kept a skull, which was remembrance of the fact that we're all human and that we all are mortal and we all face death at some point. And they would keep a bowl of salt, which was a purification item that would purify the air. And then they would keep a large water bowl, and it's usually a black glass bowl, and a candle they could light, and they would gaze into this to clear their thoughts, and that's been done for years. Is the chamber of reflection, and every night must pass through it. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of that has come out of that. A lot of people use that. We use mirrors. Mirrors are one of the most popular scrying items that you can do, and a lot of people have mirrors specifically for that. In the Jewish faith, a common custom while sitting in a shiva, which is a morning ritual, is covering all the mirrors in the home. This is a gesture of humanity, the opposite of vanity.
Humility.
Humility. I'm sorry, I said humanity. I'm sorry, humility. Yeah, got to get them new glasses. Anyway, but yeah, I think that, when you look at all these different things that they do mirrors with, and I've seen when they do like talking boards with a glass, they'll use a mirror background for that. I don't know that it necessarily has any symbolism, but that's what they generally do.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
Come meet today's hottest paranormal superstars. Enjoy hearing from them about their journeys on the road and in the field. You'll also see some vendors offering their wares, and some tarot readers and other psychics, and have fun. Thank you, and we'll hope to see you there.
All right, folks, welcome back. We're talking about mirrors today, and mirror, mirror on the wall and in the hall. Mirror facts. Several things I really thought were interesting. Mirrors can actually reflect sound as well as light. Mirrors that reflect sound waves are known as acoustic mirrors, and they were used in Britain during World War II to detect certain sound waves from enemy coming lines. I actually watched a show on this. They had these huge polished mirrors that were convex. They were kind of cone-shaped. They went into listening devices, and they could hear ship's motors and so forth off in the distance, and they put people on the shore to listen for these things. And it was on one of the abandoned TV shows on Discovery Plus. I thought it was kind of interesting.
Neat.
Yeah, I thought so. Another myth that mirrors reverse your image. Your reflection is not flipped. What you see is the left-hand side of your face on the left of the mirror, and the right-hand side on the right, giving the illusion that your reflection is reversed. However, a non-reversing mirror, or a true mirror, which I didn't know this was something, was developed. It allowed the user to see the reflection as others see them, primarily for applying cosmetics. So supposedly, if you buy a makeup mirror, they are true mirrors.
There's an app on your in TikTok, or a filter, I should say, on TikTok or Instagram, where it does the same thing, and it freaks people out.
Oh, that's bizarre.
Yeah.
Because you're used to looking at your face one way.
Yeah.
And that's how you see it, not how other people see it. And people are like, is that how people really see me?
For years, I thought I wore my bangs on one side of my head until I'm like, oh, why are my bangs on the wrong side of my head?
Because that's the side.
Because that's why.
And, you know, it's
That's your
interesting as
side
you
of
start
the
to
head.
delve
Yeah.
into this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, mirrors can only reflect light, sound, and matter, but they can also split light beams, which is just commonly used in telescopes and lasers to aim and focus, which a lot of surgery lasers and so forth are done. They're actually use mirrors to aim them, because mirrors will reflect the laser, but it won't allow the laser to cut through it. And it will reflect it onto a surface that it will cut, which I thought that was kind of interesting as well. One of the most famous stories is of a mathematician, a Greek mathematician, Archimedes, using mirrors to burn down enemy ships. And
Yep.
yeah, I
Yep.
remember reading
Yeah.
about this
Yep.
in 212 BC when photo evidence clearly wasn't invented yet. So who can say for sure? But the legend has it that it is set up hexagonal mirrors surrounded by small mirrors. This was to reflect the sun's rays onto Roman ships. The show Mythbusters actually recreated that, and it
Yep.
worked.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know there's one about Greek fire. I'd heard about that from the Spartans.
Yep.
And then there was another one where they actually, I thought was pretty good, the Greek, and this is Hermedes, would raise ships out of the water, the enemy ships. And the oarsmen couldn't move anything. They had these lifts, and they used counter lever, and they would put enough weight that it would lift the ship out of the water. Then
Wow.
it left them as a sitting duck for, you know, target practice. So kind of interesting, some of the things the Greeks came up with. You know, we're in Freemasonry, we believe heavily in, you know, that the Greeks were to credit for most architecture and most inventions, not the Romans. They just showed up and took credit. So
The Romans took credit for a lot of things.
yeah, they did that. You know, a little bit of the history of how mirrors came about, you know. 8,000 BC to about 200 BC, most mirrors were obsidian stones that were polished, highly polished, that gave enough reflection. You know, obsidian being volcano glass, you know, it produces, when it's polished, it produces a wonderful effect. And this was kind of what the, you know, if you talk about Merlin's black mirror and some of the, you know, scrying black mirrors, that's probably what they were. They were obsidian. In 200 BC in China, mirrors became more made out of bronze, and same way into 2900 BC in Egypt. And one example of this is believed to be the lighthouse at Alexandria in 280 BC. They believe that this was big
There's
carved.
actually a mirror reflecting the firelight.
Exactly,
Yep.
and they think that was the first use of it, which that's kind of interesting to know that, you know, lighthouses go back that far.
You're right.
The first metal-coated mirrors were believed to have been invented in the region that's now Lebanon during the 1st century AD. Though war and international trade ideas inevitably travel from region to region, so it was no surprise that the Romans then developed a technique for coating blown glass with lead. From this point on, glass was the chosen, you know, media for mirrors, and it was affordable, it was rigid, easy to shape, and completely transparent.
Oh, hey, maybe
Yeah.
that's why vampires can't be seen in a leaded mirror, because they're
Silver.
gin.
Oh, gin.
Lead.
Oh, yeah, lead. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Lead. Yeah, because that could be. And I never thought about that. That's a good point. I was thinking I was going the silver region.
Well,
And the
Okay.
silver route.
Yeah.
Well, what about, then that means they can see themselves in modern mirrors because it's not lead
Because
or
they're not
silver.
leaded. That's
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That's
you know,
right.
that no one's done that on one of those shows. You know, I always loved The Lost Boys. I always got a kick out of that, you know, and that one showed that once they're invited in, you know, they can, and that was one of the big legends. But I always, of course, that's a very old show now. Keith Sutherland's, I think, older than I am. But oh my God, it was hilarious when it was on, and I got a big kick out of it because they had enough comedy in it to make it fun. So, well, anyway, from 1500s to 1800s, mercury-coated glass mirrors became popular. To be specific, we're talking about the island of Murano and Venice. The Venetian mirrors originated from Murano glass mirrors is what they were called, but they were considered to be the best of their kind. They definitely weren't cheap, and while these mirrors were made with glass plates, they were also made with mercury.
Oh, joy.
Yeah. So the process used a silver tin amalgam, I believe it's
Amalgamum.
Amalgamum.
Yeah.
Okay. The precise details
So
of
that's the
how
same
this
stuff
process.
that's in fillings.
Yeah, oh yeah. I knew a guy that I worked with who had those in, and they had to go in and take every one of them out. He actually got poisoning from it,
Ooh,
mercury
wow.
poisoning, and they had to
Yeah.
go in and remove them from his mouth and change the fillings out. He finally told at one point, he said, just pull them all and let's get dentures. I don't want to fool with them anymore. But they made him very, very ill. It's really credited to 16th century Venice. And that's where still to this day, luxury mirrors are considered to come from. The mirrors were made in early conception with silver as a backing to them, which made them turn black over time as the silver oxidized. I thought that was kind of interesting. Due to this process, mirrors took on an unworldly appearance, allowing the human eye to matrix shapes and the oxidation patterns that would form in the glass. And I've seen some mirrors where you can't clean the pattern. It looks like they got smears. Well, it turns out that's oxidization from the mirror itself, and you can't clean it.
Right.
The one that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, our mirror, it has a little spot in the corner like that. And I think it's from that. Over 200 years ago in Germany, a chemist, I'm going to say this the best I can, Justus von Liebig, and Liebig. Yeah, Justus von Liebig in 1835 discovered that if you apply a thin layer of metallic silver to clear glass, you create a reflective surface, henceforth a mirror. So in 1835, he was credited with applying silver to the mirror, and that took us into the next generation of mirrors and their construction. And, it's kind of interesting because that's one of the things, that's where your big cutoff is, and they still use mercury as well with the silver. But most mirrors, if you go back even to the 1800s, before the 19th, so if you go into 1800s, you're talking mostly mercury. And if you go in the early 1900s, you're looking at mercury plus silver or just silver by itself. So old silverback mirrors often have dark lines behind the glass because the material was coated very thinly and unevenly, causing it to flake off, scratch, or tarnish. After 1940, mirror manufacturers used the metal mercury, and that's that silver mix, because it spread evenly over the surface of the glass and did not tarnish. Distorted mirrors are okay for fun houses, but obviously they can't sell them for everyday use for makeup application. Present day uses the aluminum coating, which we found aluminum actually is the most reflective surface. Once it's polished, it's more reflective than the silver or the mercury, but it has to be applied via vacuum to bond. And when the glass is cooled, they just clean it, and it provides that reflective surface. Most of the time, they will always put a paint coating and a coating on to keep it from being chipped from the back, because mirrors, they always say, well, if they're hung up, how do they get chipped? Well, I don't know, but they do that to protect the mirror. So, but that kind of gives you a quick course on how mirrors are made. So when you start looking and we start talking about investigating mirrors in an investigation, we can easily date what possibly it's made about. If we can figure out how old the mirror is, we can kind of get an idea or maybe a hypothesis to how it's made. So some famous mirrors in literature, Narcissus, thank you, which with the term
Narcissus.
Yeah, comes right from, which I found interesting, is about the earliest clear story connected to seeing a reflection.
Right.
Supposedly the ancient Greek myth tells of the handsome young man who became so enamored with his own reflection in the water, he wasted away because he couldn't leave it, and he was afraid to drink it because it would disrupt the vision. So, interesting. Alice's journey.
You never heard that one?
No, I had never
my
heard
God.
that one.
You never
No,
heard the story of
no.
Yeah, the
Narcissus?
narcissist.
Yeah, I didn't know how people, I knew there was people always being accused of being a narcissist, but I didn't know where the story actually came from. Now, I did actually take Greek and Roman literature. I got a friend of mine who's a professor, teaches it. He wrote a book. Don't buy it. Anyway, and yes, Chris Pano, that is for you. Anyway, but yeah, he actually is very, very authoritative on it. And I have never heard that story till I got looking at
There
this.
are lots of myths out there, but yeah, that's one I definitely remember learning growing up.
Well, one of the neatest, well, I say neatest, I don't know if that's a proper term for it, but, Lewis Carroll, which of course wrote, Alice in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass. And, people don't realize most most of your lullabies and your bedtime or your children's stories.
Fairy tales.
Yeah, fairy tales aren't exactly the Disney,
Dark
candy coated.
origins.
Yeah,
Dark origins
Yeah.
to fairy tales. Yep.
read the originals. It'll make you won't
Yeah.
sleep at night. I'll tell you that.
The Little Mermaid will never be the same.
Oh
No,
yeah.
no.
That
Hans Christian Andersen tale is
Oh,
dark.
yes.
That's dark.
Yes.
Yeah.
I read that when I was little. I was like, yeah.
Oh, I always loved, and of course, I loved the TV show that was on Sci-Fi for a while, Warehouse 13, and of course,
yes,
they had a lot of
yes.
artifacts that picked up that would
Yep.
Lewis Carroll artifacts, and I always got a kick out of that because they especially had the mirror, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what a dark journey. And I think it was one of them made the comment. They said if a kid ever read it, they'd never get near a mirror again. And it just again, one of the more famous mirrors that peep up. And of course, Harry Potter. We had the mirror of Isrid.
Erised.
Erised. Okay, I
You
wasn't
know what
sure.
it's desire spelled backwards.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
All right, desire spelled backwards.
Yep, that's because
Yeah.
the mirror
It
shows you what
your
you most
deepest
desire.
Exactly. Well, actually, there's a couple mirrors
And
in
it's
there.
a mirrored image of the word.
A mirrored image of
The
The
word
word.
desire.
Desired,
backwards. That
Erised.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he also had the one that Dumbledore had that went to his brother's basement. Where they communicate back and forth through the mirror.
That was a picture.
picture.
Was that a picture?
Yeah, it
That's
was a
technically
picture.
a picture. Okay,
Yeah.
so that one didn't.
Because
count.
all the pictures are actually
Yeah.
portals.
Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna say that.
They're living pictures.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
And then, of course, my favorite from Lord of the Rings, the Mirror of Galadriel. And this again is a mirror to reflection. Pool
water,
used
yeah.
scry using water. So although it's referred to as a mirror, and the mirrors of the elves are silver trays in which water is poured for images to be able to reflect. So, of course, we have Snow White, mirror, mirror on the wall. It reminded me of several of my ex-mother-in-laws. And in Edgar Allan Poe's story, William Wilson, a story about doppelgangers. There we go.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long we were talking about them.
Yeah.
Which said the mirror can create doppelgangers, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, real quick, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with you. All right, folks, we're back, and we're talking about mirrors today. Mirror, mirror on the wall and in the hall. Talk about some mirrors that are famous mirrors that we know for sure exist. And I'm going to let you take over because you know more about the... And I'm interested. I'm dying to hear the story of the Bela Lugosi mirror. So
Okay, so when I saw your script for the episode today, and the Zach Baggins Haunted Museum,
yes.
and so Zach Baggins has the haunted Bela Lugosi. It's a rather plain-looking mirror, about 2 feet tall, in the shape of a tombstone. He's got it up on the wall, and there's this little curtain rod above it with the curtain on it and the black top hat on top, right? And so the story goes, the mirror belonged to the Dracula actor Bela Lugosi, and that he used it in occult attempts to contact his deceased wife, but instead of inviting something unwanted and otherworldly, because evidently Bela Lugosi was into occult activity and scrying, according to Zach Bagans.
Apparently he was friends with Aleister Crowley.
Well, we'll see, yeah. And the mirror's next owner was a murder victim, and then subsequent owners had reported seeing a dark entity reflected in it. Some who have witnessed the mirror at Zach Bagans Museum claim to have been attacked by it or walk away with scratch marks or have uneasy dreams afterwards. So I had recently learned about Bela Lugosi's mirror about a year ago. Never heard anything about it. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. Let's learn about this. But throughout that course of the podcast, they just kept breaking it down more, where the provenance of this mirror is completely suspect and highly questionable. So like we said, the tour guide who gives tours at museums reports that people have to call 911 on people sometimes for being that physically sick after looking into the mirror.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that, Bela Lugosi used this mirror to try to contact his dead wife. So one of these skeptic guys who was at the museum did a little bit digging further. And I knew the story, but I didn't know the story. So when I read this the other day, I quickly pulled up this article and started reading through it to give me some background again. So basically, and this is just a very brief little summary. If you guys want to know more, just Google "True Facts on Bela Lugosi's Mirror."
Okay.
And you'll find this guy's article. So he went and he did some research on Lugosi, historical research, try to find out where he lived, what his wives were, and things like that. I never came across any encounter with Aleister Crowley and Bela Lugosi, although they would have been around the same time because
same time period. Yeah.
Bela Lugosi, his first marriage was in 1917.
Wasn't there a catch to the first wife? Isn't she related to nobility or something?
Well, that I don't know.
I had heard that she was related to European nobility, and it was a big argument because they didn't want. She was supposed to marry within the nobility, and she married him, and that was an issue.
That could be because her name is Iola Zimik. Szmik. So she's definitely Eastern European, I would say, from that name.
Well, this is what I always was told, and I don't know if this is accurate, that when he developed the character, because, he is the, father of Dracula. I mean, of course, my favorite was always Christopher Lee, but I grew up with that.
Right.
And, Bela Lugosi was a little bit before my time, but when you watch him, he plays it, based on the Transylvania, sort of legend to it, then yes, he's a lot more accurate. But if you notice, he has several different monocle badges that he wears on his waistcoat, and they stand out. Okay, and you don't see that when you see Christopher Lee. Well, they said he did that as a get even, I guess, with the family, because that was some of the, because he was a count. Dracula actually, of course, if you go out to bad Dracula and all that, you get into different situations. But the reason that they started out, and he actually went and said, because they just had it as Dracula, he says, no, I want him to be a count. Count Dracula. And because, he held no title, which was the big beef about her family, that he didn't hold the title. So he became Count Dracula. And he, it was kind of a good stab back, That's what I was told.
Yeah,
I don't know this other than from what I was told.
I know that Lugosi was married 4 different times.
Oh, wow.
He had 4 different wives.
Sound familiar?
Yeah, okay.
I thought the same thing. Okay. So, but his first marriage only lasted like 2 to 3 years. And then he married...
Yeah, I had one of those. Yeah.
Right. And then in 21, he married another woman. They divorced in 24. In 29, he married another woman. 4 months later, they were divorced. And then finally in 1933, he married a 19-year-old.
Yeah, wow.
And
that sounds familiar. We're not mentioning any names, but
they divorced in 1953. And then this union produced Bela Lugosi Jr., which is Lugosi's only child.
Yeah.
But...
Is he still living, or do they know?
I don't know if he is still living.
I'm surprised he hasn't showed up at one of the Paracons or something along that line.
Right. He may be, because he and his daughter have a website to Bela Lugosi.
Oh, wow.
And they come and play in this story here. But none of Lugosi's wives died while they were married.
Really?
So how is he trying to contact a deceased wife? So there's one little hole there. So he's not trying to contact his recently deceased wife.
This reminds me of Diana of the Dunes,
Yes. Okay. So yes, the way that Zach Bagans got this mirror is from someone named Cindy. Now Cindy is the niece of the second owner, this Frank Salteri. Okay, Frank Salteri is the one who was murdered in the house. Okay, and he was murdered on Primrose. That's where the mirror came from. Okay. Cindy was at the house with her uncle, visiting a lot. Salteri is the one who told Cindy that this was Bela Lugosi's mirror.
Oh.
Okay, so we have no proof other than Salteri that it was ever Bela Lugosi's mirror. So Cindy knew that it was Bela Lugosi's mirror. The issue is that Salteri was in the Hollywood scene.
Sure.
He was in the horror industry. He was in the film industry. He idolized Lugosi, right? He idolized Lugosi. He put on parties to come to the Lugosi Dracula house, right? Okay,
Yes.
he really played up the connection.
Mm-hmm.
Probably for his own
Well,
benefit.
sure. Why
right?
not? Yeah,
Why not?
Why wouldn't he be
right?
doing it? Yeah.
So after looking through Bela Lugosi's residence history from what this article could find, they could not find any connection between Bela Lugosi and living at the Primrose address, which is where Frank Salteri lived. Now, the mirror was hung in the same bedroom where Frank Salteri was murdered.
Okay.
And the murder was supposed to be mobland, gangland style.
So the mirror has some credibility
The mirror
as far
has
as
some
the murder.
credibility
Yeah, it
for
could be
being haunted,
Yes.
but not necessarily connected to Lugosi.
Bela Lugosi, yeah.
And the Lugosi family has been in contact with the guy that wrote this article, and they cannot find any connection to Lugosi, to the scrying, to the Aleister Crowley angle. They don't have any knowledge of that. So that one is up in the air. Who knows?
Yeah.
And I know Bela Lugosi was kind of a very private man, so
Yeah.
there's probably things that we don't know,
And they don't know.
and they don't know. I mean, this is almost
Yeah.
100 years old.
Yeah.
Well, and if
You
you,
know,
were
we're in
if you were having anything to do
2023.
with Aleister Crowley, you sure as hell didn't tell people. About
No,
it.
not really.
This is a guy who taunted to be, worse than the devil himself, the most evil
Exactly.
man that ever lived.
Yep.
And he enjoyed that title.
Yep.
And people that had any kind of interaction with him, they made sure they didn't, especially if they were in the Hollywood light,
Right.
that would kill a career in a heartbeat.
It would, and just a little spoiler, the next episode we've got coming up, Aleister Crowley kind of plays a little bit part.
Oh, good. Okay.
I've
Okay.
already got that one written and ready to go.
I have a whole collection of his books, and I have not, I'll be honest with you, I have not had a chance, they're all online, so I haven't had a chance to read them yet. But that is one cat that's way, way gone. I'll tell you what.
Yes, he is.
I got to see the last house that he inhabited. They did a tour of it, and it's dilapidated and falling apart. But they won't even tear it down for fear of his recoil. Even though he's dead, they're afraid that the repercussions would be ungodly.
Right. So, just to sum, and then
Yeah.
the guy who wrote this article then got in touch with Cindy, who was the original person who gave the mirror to Zach. And Cindy was extremely honest and, straightforward.
Sure.
Like, this was a story that my uncle told me. So
This is
that's where
what I
mine
know.
came from. But where it actually came from, we don't really know.
And the funny thing is, just to deviate for a minute, there is a new Dracula movie coming out, or may have already come out.
I think it's out.
Yeah, it's called Renfield.
Renfield.
I'm sorry, Renfield.
Oh, gosh, yes, with Nicolas Cage.
Oh, I can't. I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, I've seen a few YouTube shorts.
I can't.
Yeah, he's not the first person I would think to be
No,
Dracula.
no.
But oh my God, he's hilarious at it. Especially when he comes in the support group and he's giving all these titles as he drifts in. But I want to see because I think it'll be funny.
It
It's
is going
more
to be
of a
one of those
comedy.
comedy
Oh, yeah.
renditions.
So
Yeah.
well, and I tell you, it's a funny thing because mirrors seem to play a big part in a lot of hauntings that people don't realize. Now, I'm not going to say it's a majority, but certainly there's more of them out there than you think. And people always talk about, getting haunted items. And, the thing that I remember, and the next one we're going to talk about is the Gettysburg mirror that was in the Farnsworth house. But they called in the Nykirks, and one thing that Dana Nykirk said that I thought was very, very true is if you own a haunted object, you have a tremendous responsibility to ensure that it cannot hurt anyone and that it's kept in a manner that it's not going to expose anyone to danger.
Correct.
And, so I sit and think about some of these museums and some of the, you take... you take the Warrens Museum, okay? And Tony does a good job. Matter of fact, there was a video or something I saw where he was all the times that he has regularly has this priest come in and bless and seal Annabella's cabinet. He goes to great extremes. But when you're pumping, like in Las Vegas, you're pumping a ton of people through there. It makes you wonder, why we're not keeping that mirror in a case of salt and why, there should be more preparations for that. Because, there's a certain amount of, I guess, showmanship that they're worried about.
Well, everything
And
with
hyper
Zach
that-
is showmanship.
Showmanship,
That's what he presents first and foremost is a showmanship.
That's his shtick.
That is.
Yep.
That is.
Yep. It's kind of reminds you of Barnum Bailey. The show must go on, and
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Definitely
it
a
does.
modern day Barnum.
That's what I see when I see him, and and of course I don't watch these shows. I seen the original show way back when he started out. It was a totally different than I've seen a few since then. But
I tried to watch this newest one where he's at Lake Mead,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like, every
with
other
the lake,
word.
with the Lake Mead disintegrating and all. He's got a show there now.
Yes, because of all the hauntings around the Hoover Dam and the railroad tunnels and all. It would have been a really amazing episode, except every other word was occult this, occult that, demon calling this, demon call. And the stretches that I'm surprised that he didn't pull his hamstring 12 different times, because he just stretched right on out.
God, yeah. Some people, it's like when people call, a lot of people interchangeably use the word ghost and demon. I have a demon in my house. You do?
You do?
All right. Let's what makes you think it's a demon? That's the first question I always ask. And they go, well, it's haunting me. Okay, that doesn't mean anything.
No.
You know,
a man seen sitting in the desert meditating turns into a witch doctor performing satanic rituals, trying to summon the devil.
Yeah, that's another little show I probably won't catch. Now, I will say, I
Really?
saw...
Yes, really?
It doesn't surprise me. Yeah, the Devil House that he did, I thought was okay.
That was one of his better.
It was one of his better. It was more serious. It was more scientific hair. I mean, it wasn't totally by any measure, but it was a lot more documentary based than it was sensational based. You know,
it was one of his, but it still was tilted to the demonic.
Oh yeah. But you know, and
no other explanation.
I tell you what, I can never take another Hoover Dam tour, because ever since National Lampoon's, well, I think it's vacation. Welcome to the dam tour. Take all the damn pictures you like. Yeah, every time I keep hearing this little tour guide going, you know, and you know, I start laughing immediately. I've only been out there once, and I mean, it's great. But once you've had one tour, there's some places one tour is enough, and that's it. You know, and after the drive to get there, and then the tour, and then, you know, one time, I won't be able to say I did that in my life, but that's it. You know, flying over is cheaper, faster, and a lot more rewarding. You know, there's helicopter rides that'll take you over. It looks a lot better, just for those about to travel. Okay, so getting back to mirrors, we'll talk about the Gettysburg Mirror. The Farnsworth house, which is the house that the original sniper shot Jenny Wade from, Confederate sniper. That house is, of course, been open for tours, and they inherited I won't say inherited, they purchased a mirror from a sale, and apparently it originally wasn't in the Farnsworth house. It got put in there within a period of time that was I think it was in there about 2 months, and it was taken from an estate sale. And the funny thing was, it was from the Collins estate that the mirror was bought. Now, I don't know where they kept the mirror at before it originally ended up in the home, but it was kept somewhere else, and they purchased it. And when it was brought in, it was a very large mirror, had a big gold ornate frame to it, and immediately it started having problems. When they kept it in the basement, and if you've ever been to the Farnsworth house, you enter from the outside, you go in, and there's church pews, and you sit down, and the tour guide tells you all about the house and that part of the Civil War, because that whole strip was, at that time, was nothing but a shooting gallery between the Confederates and the Union soldiers. He talks, and then they take you upstairs, you go out and go upstairs and through the house, and then you end up in the attic, and they tell you about, you know, how the Confederate sharpshooter took a shot that strayed and hit Jenny Wade in the Jenny Wade house. So they go through all this. But anyway, the women kept getting attacked by the mirror. When I say attacked, they would have feelings like someone was trying to compress their throat or choke them, scratch them, pulling their hair. So they called in, which, you know, that was kindred spirits. They called them in, and Amy and Adam had been there before. They come in, they tried to start, you know, researching this, and as they went down through, it turned out the mirror actually wasn't that old. The frame was very old, and the mirror had been broken, apparently replaced, they believe, several times. They brought in an expert, and the guy come in, and he's an antique, you know, dealer, and he walked in and said, well, you know, I think the mirror's from the 1900s, or the frame. The mirror's from the 1950s. He says, probably been replaced several times. He says, I guarantee you, the frame...
And the frame was a picture frame, not a mirror frame.
Yeah. All right, listeners, we're taking a quick break, and we'll be right back. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Chief Lawson with Spirit Ghost to Ghost and Spirit Indiana Paranormal. We would like to invite you to the Fort Wayne Paracon at 216 East Washington Boulevard, Fort Wayne, Indiana, at Freemasons Hall, September 29th and 30th. Please come join us. Tickets are reasonable. You can get those online, and certainly we'll have a good time. There's some notable celebrities coming. We have Grant Wilson, Dustin Perry, and Chris Williams, not to mention Brian Murray, and as we say, Sean Pittman, poor Sean. Dave Spinks will be there, Jenny Flack. and Dana Strickler. So please take the time to come out and enjoy. And most importantly, Spirit Indiana Paranormal will be there. We'll be on site. We'll be shooting a episode of Ghost to Ghost. So you don't want to miss that. Again, tickets are very reasonable. They can be found online. If you go online to FW Paracon, Fort Wayne Paracon, this is a first for Indiana. The first time for Fort Wayne Paracon, first time for a Paracon in Indiana. So please come out and see us. Come out and see me. We'll be at the booth. We'll have the entire group there. Thank you so much. Sorry, folks, we had to take a quick break and calm Czar down. Czar is our teacup Pomeranian who stands security for all of our podcasts. And so, yes, apparently terrorists were attacking and she had to bark. So, all right, back to our mirrors. We're talking about the Farnsworth mirror. But anyway, as Heather pointed out, the frame had originally came from a painting or a picture. Well, they traced it back, and it turned out one of the Collinses, which happened to be Clarence Collins, was one of the first murderers, since the Civil War. After the, I believe it was 1926, I believe it was, but don't quote me on that. They found out that him and his associate had killed a tour guide while they were on a Gettysburg battlegrounds tour, and he shot him in the back of the head and hid the body.
Yeah, they hired him in a car tour.
Yeah, for the day.
For the day.
Yeah, okay. And then while he was driving, they shot him while he was driving and killed him. And then also, he'd been arrested prior to that for soliciting prostitution.
For trafficking.
Yeah, he brought women across the state line.
Oh, I do remember that. The trafficking mart. I remember that. Okay.
So this guy was a pretty, bad dude all the way around. When they arrested him, put him in his jail cell, he painted this wonderful portrait on the back of the jail cell. They got him, I guess, provided him with paint supplies, and he painted a winter escape, and they show the picture of it. He was an avid painter and quite a good one. And they think that one of his paintings was in the frame, and he transferred to the frame, an attachment. So, so that's what they thought. And they immediately, when they removed the frame, they suggested that the Farnsworth house owners remove the frame and put it somewhere else. So it was taken to an undisclosed location. Since then, they've had no problems. So, attachments can be maybe the frame, not just the mirror.
Right.
So, in this case, it was the frame, not the mirror. So, one of my favorite stories took place in 2013 in London. And this name I'm going to need a little help with.
Sartoris.
Yeah, the last one, it's French.
Charlembeau?
Charlembeau is what I think. Chambleau's. I thought Charlembeau or Chambleau's. So Sartoris and his roommate Joseph Birch found a mirror in the dumpster outside the residence. Now, bear in mind, this is 2013. Appeared to be in great shape, so they became the newest addition to their flat. Things started going downhill immediately after they brought the mirror in.
Of course it did.
And, all that this couldn't be from a mirror, right? But these mirrors, the setback was too extreme, and it started right after they brought the mirror in. Things around the flat also started going missing, and they couldn't find them with no explanations. Joseph started to see things moving in the mirror, shadow-like figures. This was happening even when no one was in the room was moving. Everyone was sitting down, or there was only one person in the room, whatever the case may be. After all this mayhem, the boys realized they needed to get rid of the mirror as soon as possible. So they auctioned it off on eBay, which brings up a whole new story that I got to give you. But giving full disclosure of their experiences with the mirror. Once the mirror was out of their possession, their lives returned to normal. Let me tell you what, on eBay, you can buy anything haunted. If you want to buy a haunted doll, give me 20 minutes to run over to Goodwill real quick, and I'll come back and I'll get you a haunted doll. I mean, this is how this goes.
Well, you could probably find a haunted doll at Goodwill.
I think my daughter did.
Oh, no kidding.
That's for another day.
Oh, hey, that's a good story. But I always see these, because every once in a while when I'm real bored, I'll go through the eBay app and just work up the word haunted item and see all the stuff that comes up. And we had a guy that, and Jeff remembers this, it's been maybe 2 years ago, had a haunted painting.
Yeah.
And he wanted us to take possession of it, and we actually reached out to Tony on Spia with the Warrens, it's his son-in-law, and asked him how to handle this for advice, and he gave us the lowdown on how to handle the painting, how to get it out of there, and protection that was needed. So it was really kind of nice. And I'll be honest with you, we never did end up getting the painting, but the painting all had to do with a relation of Hoagie Carmichael, and it happened. The painting was of a cabin that was a murder site in Nashville, Indiana. So, long story short, we never got the painting, and it turned out this guy first he wanted to give it to us, and then he was looking to sell it. And
He wanted us to buy it.
yeah, and then I think the family stepped in and got the painting. The whole thing about the painting was in the cabin. Supposedly, in the painting of the cabin, you saw a light come on in the windows occasionally, and it would be a candlelight. And sometimes the light would be lit in the panel, and I mean, it didn't flicker or glow. It just showed a painting of a lit candle, and sometimes the candle wasn't there. And henceforth the reason, or at least the evidence, that it was truly haunted. And you did the research on that. And it was a good deal.
Yeah, it was interesting research. The backstory, I think, was completely fake from the gentleman, but the story of the murder in the cabin, that was rather interesting. So.
Oh, yeah, and I think that, he was trying to make a fast buck, and, that was the easiest way to do it. Anyway, but yeah, that's the thing on eBay is like somebody said, you can find anything on eBay. Oh, yeah. That is for sure and for certain. So, one of the most famous mirrors in the world is a large mirror that hangs in the Myrtles Plantation. And I think we've all heard of this mirror. It's said that the ghostly faces within the mirror, and I think this goes back to, the slave. Let me think of her name.
Chloe,
that's right.
She's our ghost story of the day.
Is she? Okay, well, Chloe, murdered. Well, I won't give the spoiler on that for the ghost story of the day. But anyway, due to her actions, it trapped the souls within the mirror, and they believe Chloe is within the mirror, is my understanding.
So, going back to what you said earlier about the tarnishing, and the tarnishing creating images in the glass. So, are we really looking at smudges? Are those smudges tarnishings because of the interaction of the spirit? Mm-hmm.
Who knows, or the spirits causing the smudges.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot to look at. Yeah, certainly. The other mirror, and I never knew this. This is one fact that I never knew. There's a laser reflecting mirror that was left by Apollo astronauts on the moon.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
anybody who's seen Big Bang knows that.
Oh, and that's another show I've never watched. Never watched The Big Bang Theory, but apparently this is what they use to reflect to determine the speed, rotation of the actual moon. And I thought, wow, I didn't know that. I never had ever heard that, so I thought that was pretty cool as well.
The guys bounced the laser off
the mirror,
their mirror on the moon.
Oh, wow. Yep. Wow. That's a heck of a laser. There's a guy on YouTube that has a laser like that. Paid like, $20,000 for this laser. And he takes it out, mounts it on his car occasionally with all this equipment to run it, and cooling systems. You have to have a cooling system for a green laser that size. And he does that all the time. He's always shooting some target somewhere off in the stars or something. And, it's kind of interesting. I'll have to watch that episode. I've seen little snippets of that, but never watched that show. And I've seen snippets of Young Sheldon. That was another show apparently it followed. So, anyway, now let's talk about how mirrors are affected in parapsychology. We get a lot of things about spiritual attachments, and I always jokingly say that, 75 to 80, let's just say 80% of the time, spirits attach to a location. Okay. Another 15% of the time, they attach to a object, okay? And then 5% or less, they attach to a person. Okay, and that's just loose figures. The cable guy once said that 17% of all figures are made up on the spot. And anyway, so I relate back to that.
72%.
Or 72%, yeah. I love that. I have never forgot that because, someone asked me, and I said, that's the number I just magically came up with. But it seems to be, I base that on the experience of all the investigations for the last 30-some years we've been doing. And I'll be honest with you, it tends to be more that way. More often, spirits, there are times, and I know there was somebody had a TV show that, basically related to the fact that everything was attached to an object. It doesn't always work that way. I mean, it may be in a location, and if it's residual, well, that's a whole different ballgame. I was just going
to say, that doesn't count any of the residuals.
Count at all.
Because that's not attached
changes
at all.
Things up. Yep. So, I mean, you have to, when you're doing investigations, you have to look at it that way. And there's a lot of ways to examine that. If you think someone's attached to the mirror, which we'll talk about this kind of with ours, or could it be a portal, which mirrors are known to be portals that allow spirits to come and go. And I have a lot of people, for some reason, there was a lot of fascination when the last lecture I gave, and I got asked a lot of questions about vortexes and how vortexes form. Well, that's the funny thing. Parapsychology is not an exact science, and my doctor informs me that neither is medicine, that they've got a license to practice. They didn't say they knew what they were doing. So anyway, that's always reassuring. And that same thing in parapsychology. We really don't know how they form, but
they practice medicine, don't do medicine.
That's right, and they don't necessarily do it right, but they practice it, and that's the same with parapsychology. We're not sure what forms the vortexes, and we don't know how in the world that comes about, but they can be used as a vortex or a portal, and that. We just talked about all this history and beliefs, and that came up more than once. A portal for the souls. So why couldn't it be a portal for the haunted? Mirrors in a house where someone has passed, that creates where the mirrors were uncovered. Certainly right. That leads an option. Cursed mirrors. I've heard, like the case of the Bela Lugosi mirror, and there's some other ones too. I found a bunch on cursed mirrors. I didn't put a lot of that in here. And then we were talking earlier about the Caputo effect, and that's a psychological effect that leads you to react to sensory deprivation with your imagination. In other words, if you want to see a ghost, you'll make a ghost in that mirror. If you are that set on it and you're seeing some sort of faint, abstract imagery, you're going to create a ghost out of that. That's one thing the Caputo effect certainly shows. Can they capture energy of events imprinted? We talk about residual haunts. That could catch an imprinted. It could work as a battery, especially depending on if it's original quartz glass mirrors. They could very easily do that. Some of the mirrors were quartz, and that could pick it up. Mental matrixing, that's another possibility. Our mind tends to want to take shapes and make logical explanations out of them, and it's the same thing as sitting on a hill looking at clouds, going, well, that one looks like a horse, that one looks like a cow, that one looks like a dog, and that comes into it. Now, the other thing that I kind of included in this area was psychomantrium, and this is, you don't want me to do that?
No, go ahead, but I am never getting into a psychomantrium. I can't even look at my bathroom mirror in the dark. You think I'm going to go into a room?
Ever since that Bloody Mary thing, yeah.
No.
She's like, no.
Well, and this is odd. Actually, the Gettysburg episode.
They did one on the Gettysburg.
Yeah, they did, and it was done differently than I'd ever seen. Most of the psychomantrium I've seen done, they put a candle in front of the mirror, and you sit and you stare until your eyes go out of focus, and then you can start to see things in the mirror. They did a little differently. They angled the mirror, which our mirror you couldn't angle. It's a full call mirror, but they angled it 45 degrees, so you couldn't see directly in the mirror. They put the candle behind them, which I thought that was fairly interesting and worth trying, and then they stared into it until they could see or to visualize images, and it's kind of like a meditation. And it's believed that during this psychomantrium, if you do that and you stare into it, eventually things will go dark and it will show you whoever is in the mirror haunting the mirror. So it's believed that that is part of the ability to investigate a mirror is by running that. Now again, and we'll talk about this in a minute. We've tried that roundabouts. We've tried a minor psychomantrium, and it doesn't always work, first of all, and a lot of times it doesn't work at all. So and we'll talk about that.
Well, there are two places I know that have created a psychomantrium room where they've got multiple mirrors, like almost in a fun room.
Well, that's the way it originally was designed.
All of them around you.
With like 8 or 10 mirrors, and the idea was that was the way they originally. It was originally it was designed by the Greeks, and the psychomantrium was designed to have more than one mirror, and the mirrors were to be set at 45-degree angles, kind of like a fun house, being a room of a fun house, and you're supposed to be able to see behind you that reflection.
Now, my girls will never have two mirrors back to back, facing each other. Yeah. They do not like that. My sister has that set up in her apartment. She's got a mirror in her bedroom.
That's popular.
And then there's a mirror in the bathroom. And if the doors are open, you can see both. And the girls, whenever they go over, they shut that bathroom door because they don't like that effect.
Well, a lot of bathrooms are being set up that way. Mirrors behind you, so you can see how your hair is or whatever.
That's
a pretty common thing.
Used to have that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You'd see yourselves.
Yep.
Well, I mean,
160.
I used to buy a suit, and after a while, you get to an age you don't change size. Thank God, you can keep suits damn near forever. But when I went to the tailor, you'd stand on a box and it had a 3-wing mirror. They're called 3-wings, and that way they could see the sides and you could see all that, and and that. And then when you turned around, they had another floor mirror set up where you could see the back of the suit and everything.
Right.
And it's the same kind of thing. I thought about trying to find one of those, if I could find a small version of a 3-wing mirror to try that
Yeah.
with different locations at times we're into.
That's okay. I'll just stay in the control room doing that.
Yeah, you stay at Command Central. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't play. I found it interesting. That was one of the interesting episodes to watch them do the psychomantrum. And I will say the Nykerks did a good job with it, although they got a little bit, but not a lot. Again, folks, it's not like Magic 101, and it's not like going down and seeing Blackstone work. You can't just go into it expecting you're going to see all and believe all immediately. I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And
how much is mental matrixing and how much is
you got to sort that out and filter it out, and it depends on how sensitive you are. I've never been super sensitive, so I don't try that because I don't think I'd be a candidate for it. Other people, on the other hand, that are more sensitive, they would be perfect for it. And for those that are hearing, our security dog is barking in the background, and so she wants something. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with you.
Good evening. This is Jennifer with Spirit and Ghost to Ghost podcast. Come join us at the FW Paracon, the first annual Fort Wayne Paracon, September 29th through 30th, as we kick off with Kathy Hahn, the very first ever Indiana Paracon. Come meet today's hottest paranormal superstars, Grant Wilson, Dustin Perry, Chris Williams, Rochelle Stratton, Brian Murray, and many more. You'll be able to sit down with a variety of psychics and mediums, have tarot card readings, and it's going to feature a variety of vendors offering merchandise and other experiences. You must come. If you haven't had a Paracon before, join us, please. See you there.
All right, folks, we are back, and joining us as our head of security, Czar. She'll be overseeing most of the rest of the podcast here up close and personal. So, okay, so we talked all about mirrors and how mirrors, the history and famous mirrors, and I told you that so I could tell you this, is the famous Las Vegas saying. We have a mirror in our house that I and Heather have, and we inherited this mirror back in 2018.
We purchased.
Well, we purchased. We didn't inherit. We purchased. We bought it. And I and Heather love to go to garage sales and to antique stores, and especially estate sales. And there's a place in Beech Grove, Indiana. At the time, they weren't doing auctions. They just did estate sales. And people would have, so much stuff. And anything that didn't sell in the estate sale, they purchased, apparently was their policy, and they brought it to their shop. So next to that shop, and just so we understand, I'm not getting paid for any of this advertisement from anybody. I don't remember the name. Let's see, I think I wrote it down here. No, I didn't write it down here. I think it's like ABC Auction or something now, but it was named something different then. And it's right across the street from a little shop of resale, which is called the Blue Caboose. And Heather liked to go in the Blue Caboose. So while she was in the, you just realized you're sitting with your back to the mirror, aren't you, Jennifer? Jennifer's sitting with her back to the mirror in question. So we went, I stopped over there first to gaze around. And oddly enough, the ironic thing is I purchased two things that day. I purchased the mirror, and I purchased a laser disc of Disco Inferno. And the guy looked at me and says, I didn't think I'd ever sell that. I bought it.
We almost never sold it either.
Yeah, we resold it and about never got rid of it. But anyway, it was just one of those spur of the moment. Actually, I thought it was a record when I bought it. I didn't realize it was a laser disc.
Oh, yeah.
And so I picked it up thinking, this is the original, because I do collect some original albums. I have a bunch of albums, and we have, a turntable. And so, matter of fact, funniest thing we ever happened was my stepdaughter, when she first started coming over, asked me about the turntable. I said, well, what do you want to know about it? She goes, how does it work? I go, you're kidding me. She goes, no, she'd never seen a record played. So we actually played a record for her so she could see what me and Mom used to listen to. And it was so hilarious because she was so fascinated with that whole process. And but anyway, Yeah, so we purchased this mirror, and I think we paid about $150 for it, which was dirt cheap. And this is a beautiful mirror. It's original glass. It goes from the floor to the ceiling. It is an actual 8-foot mirror. Actually, it's like 7.5 feet, but they call them 8-foot hall mirrors. Now, a lot of them were designed into what they call coat trees or hall trees, where you can hang things. This was not. It's got a lot of ornate wood carvings in it, and it has a marble shelf. And the shelf was used if you were dressing to put your shoes on, and it wasn't actually to sit on. I found that out. You don't sit on it, but you can put
break it.
Yeah, very easily. And then when I got it, there was a few pieces. Go ahead.
You set your purse or your keys.
Yeah. Your gloves. It was made for gloves and top hats. And
I was just going to say calling cards.
Yeah, calling cards and things you could leave. And so when I got it, the marble had been detached. I reattached the marble. There's a couple of wood pieces that had been broken. I repaired those. And probably the reason the mirror appreciates us and causes us no harm is the fact I spent quite a bit of time fixing it back up. So anyway, but we bought it, and I started trying to figure out where this mirror came from. The crown molding at the top was loose, and we did a lot of gluing and changing, and it has some beautiful relief architecture. Well, I found out this mirror is a Victorian piece from the period of the Gothic Revival or Rococo Revival. These mirrors were quite common and were usually an entryway of a lot of homes in the Victorian era. So, the mirror itself dates somewhere between 1880 and 1940 is what we've got, 1930. That's when they were very popular. So this mirror probably more than likely is either silver and or mercury in the back. And it is the original mirror. It is still in the back, and it is painted over, coated. So I know it has to be one of those two. The wood, we believe, and this was big. They were called Victorian because of Queen Victoria, and she enjoyed mirrors in her palace in either hallway. And I believe it to be of rosewood, which all the high quality pieces were. It's either rosewood or mahogany, but it's not dark enough to be mahogany. So I'm sure it's rosewood is what it's made out of. I did call the auction because a lot of things happened, and we've got to look curious to where it came from. And I called, there's two owners of the auction. I spoke with one of the gentlemen, and he said, well, his partner was in charge of the store back then. I gathered maybe he wasn't in a partnership then. And he said, that's before we became an auction. All we did was just sell, estate sale items. He said, and he says, I don't know that he have a record on where it came from, but you can go in and talk to him. Now, I've tried 3 or 4 times and been unable to reach him. I don't think, and it may be a privacy issue too. They don't want to let me know where the sale came from. I was just curious to see where that might have come from, and I thought I'd see if I could talk my research manager into doing some research on if I could find out, but I never did find anything out.
I shall love that.
Yeah. So, but
I'll do any research, just don't ask me to sit with it.
Yeah, and it's it sits out here
by yourself anyway.
By myself.
For the listeners to understand, when you come into our house, you walk right into my office. That's where our front door is at, and we're renting this home. It's a very small home. We're looking for a new one, but where it's at is the entryway is about probably 4 foot by 8 foot by 8 foot, and then the mirror's on one side, and there's a large ornate probably 1920 sitting chair on the other side. And it's a project we got that we're going to refinish and add my family's Scottish tartan to. And so anyway, after the mirror originally, when we moved from our old house, which we lived more in the city, we moved out to this location, and I don't give out the location for obvious reasons, but anyway, we moved out, and the mirror got put in the garage because our moving practice at the time was unload all the trucks into the garage and then bring stuff in gradually from the garage and sort it where it belongs. That seems like a really good idea. If you're moving, think about it. It doesn't exactly work 100%, but it's better if you know what
it sounded good at the time.
Yeah, it looked good on paper, as we say in the military and the government. It looked good on paper. It's better if you know where it goes to put it in that room and then sort the rooms individually. But hey, we were going to give this a go, and so it got buried behind a ton of boxes, and it stayed in the garage for almost a year and was never brought into the house. And actually, this office became a sorting pile. On both sides of the front door, there's huge piles of stuff we had to go through, and we finally got it under control. So it actually probably came in the house about 2019. And so, several things began to happen. And I think they happened prior to that, but technically the mirror was in the house. It was just in the garage. And I think that, something is certainly very attached, I believe, to the mirror. Now, possibly. Now, there's another, and we'll talk about this in a minute. I'm going to have Heather tell her story, and I think Heather and Jennifer both were. We were at Michigan
Jennifer
Paracon.
was there with me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about that. But anyway, the first thing that happened was, and we didn't know about this, my youngest stepson, Ashley, he was in his bedroom, one of the spare rooms that, when they come to stay, he sleeps in. And he was probably about 12 or 13, I think, at the time.
Probably closer to 11.
Maybe closer to 11. So, he said he woke up in the middle of the night and saw, and this is what we began to see long before we ever put two and two together. It could be the mirror. We saw a shadow person. And the shadow guy moved and came into the room where he was at and walked through the closet like he was going toward the family room, living room, which there's a fireplace there. But he walked through the corner, which they have on the other side, it has this strange little hall closet. We always thought that wasn't originally there. And in the 60s, 50s, 60s, when this house was built, freestanding fireplaces were all the rage.
Right.
You could look through and you went around it and it stood in the middle of the
double-sided fireplace.
Double-sided,
Yeah.
and I kind of halfway wonder at some point if this, because the thing is, something was changed in it, and it never has ever worked. We've not been able to ever burn it. And they actually, the owner that built the house converted to gas logs because it was so messed up. And we think it originally was supposed to be a see-through fireplace, was never made. Now, we ended up running into the son of the parents that built the house, and he gave me a lot of information, filled me in. And he said, yeah, there was something always wrong with the brick mason, made a mistake. So anyway, but it appears to my stepson. He never told this till we started talking about other things, and then there was a night.
He come running out.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, when time he did come running out, and he was kind of hesitant to talk about it, but then he told us what went on. Then was it 2 or 3 nights later? It appeared in the bedroom to you?
Something like that.
Yeah, maybe a week. I was about half asleep, and Heather goes frantic, and you tell it.
Yeah, it was in the head of our bed faces. Butts up to the outside wall. This is for reference. And it was on the corner of the house on the ceiling. And it was at the time when it first started manifesting, it was just a black blob. And then it fully formed into a human shape. And then it just went across our whole bed towards
The hallway?
towards the kids' room.
Oh, towards the kids' room.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of thinking it might have been the same night. And it went from
Maybe
our
it
room
was. I don't
to
know.
their room.
I can't recall.
And then out. I'm not sure. But I was like, hey, you see that? And he's like, huh? What?
Well, and I didn't have my glasses on, so everything
And
was
by the
fuzzy.
time he
and,
got
yeah.
them on and everything,
Yeah.
it was already gone.
Right.
It was so quick, and she explained to me what happened. Then we started having some strange happenings. The dog and the cat would take notions, and we have one of these typical 1950 designed homes where there's a long hallway that leads to all the bathrooms, the bedrooms, and all that. And when I sit in the living room, where I sit at, I can look right down the hall. I'm on the couch, and Heather's dad, Roy, always laughingly says I'm like Archie Bunker. I have my seat, and that's my seat in the house. It's my throne. I won't let the kids
It's
in
his
it.
spot.
If I come in, the kids or anybody's in it, they have to move because that's my spot. I have everything arranged on my side table the way I want it. I want to sit there and watch TV, but I can also look straight down the hallway. The dogs was the first to start. And Czar will bark at a lot of things, but she has extremely good hearing. And we've had stuff fall in the garage before and not know it. We've been in bed, and she'll go ape, and we'll look in. Of course, we have cameras, and we'll look in the cameras, and there's nothing anywhere, and we can't figure out what she's barking about. The next day, I'll go out in the garage, and this fell or that fell, and she heard it. She can hear things outside. We've seen a raccoon in the cameras before, and she knew it was there and had a fit. So we wrote a lot of things off that she was hearing something outside the house or something we couldn't hear that we'd figure out the next day, obviously, when we ran into it. And she'd look down the hall and growl and growl and growl. And then the cat started acting weird. He would sit and look down the hall, and he would get real spooky and want to come down and stay with us. So when we went to bed, we go up and we shut our doors. Being a fire chief, I can tell you the first rule of fire safety is shut your door. If you shut your door and you have a fire in the house, that provides you some protection until either we can get to you or gives you more time to escape. And you shut your door as a fire break. So we're in the bedroom, and the dog is going to the edge of the bed, staring at the door, growling. Now, I'm looking at a camera on my TV that's right outside the door.
There.
Yeah, I can see everything right outside my door, and all the other bedroom doors shooting down. It shoots down the hallway to the living room. I've got a clear path. I can see everything, and there's nothing there. And she does it not only once, just 2 or 3 times. Still does it to this day. So we started thinking, hey, we've got something here. We would try to decide. We thought, well, it must be attached to the house. Maybe it's one of the gentleman who built the home passed away, according to his son. The mother was still alive, but was moved into, at that time, into assisted living. He actually came to a garage sale we had. That's how we found him. So I think that, there's obviously something still here. Now, the oddest thing was I have my commission, my officer's commission, hung on the wall. And so anyway, during one of these nights, the dog goes ape, and we didn't hear anything. And I got up the next morning, and the commission is in a frame. It's not super. I mean, it was hung at least 6 foot off the floor on the wall. The floor is tile. It's ceramic tile.
Yep.
The kitchen is ceramic tile. It's all the same tile. It's not the greatest tile, but it's tile. And the thing is this is in a wood frame with a glass on front of it. I get
Thin
up,
plate glass.
Thin plate glass, easily breakable. I get up, and my commission is right. And when you come out of my office, the first room you go into is the kitchen. It's a galley kitchen. My commission is leaning up against the entrance to the kitchen, unbroken, unscathed,
upright.
Now, bear in mind, the nail had given way. Okay, I did look to see, and I don't use nails; I use screws. And yeah, it's actually the one right here behind the TV at the very top. And that one, came down, and I found it laying up against this far wall, just laying. So the wall that it was mounted to is at a 90-degree angle to where it was rested. There's no way this thing, if it fell off, what was immediately...
It would have hit that television monitor.
Yeah, it hit the television monitor. It would have sent it sideways and would have broke. Best case scenario, if it missed the TV monitor, it went down into the trash can, which is right underneath it. But neither way would it have come unscathed. I mean, this thing would have broke. The glass is not that
gone.
That's a cheap frame. I mean, it's not.
I was going to say that frame would have busted at one of the
angles.
angles.
Yeah. One time I was going to take all my diplomas on my ego wall and make them all the same frame until I realized what that cost would be, and I thought, nope, we're keeping the frame. So anyway, but it was really odd.
We could all just paint them the same color.
Oh, yeah, that'd work. Yeah, I like the wood. But anyway, it's just really odd. So we couldn't figure this out. So I said, well, anyone willing to take care of my commission that well, I'm good. They can stay here all they like. As a matter of fact, it'd be nice if they added to security and did patrols. I mean, So we were kind of laughing about that. And I want everybody to know, we live in a country area. We don't live where it's rough. But anyway, I always lottery numbers. I can bring that in. So, all this stuff starts happening. We keep relating back to this guy. And then we started hearing voices. One night we were laying in bed, and we heard a man and woman arguing. We thought it was the neighbors, but we looked up, and there's nobody out. I mean, this is like 3 a.m. And we could hear them plain as day. It was almost like they were on a phone conversation, like we were holding a handset of a telephone and they were talking. We never could figure out where they were at. We thought somebody was cutting through our yard, but we have a motion system that tells us if anybody comes through the yard, we're the first to know it.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Yeah, it goes off frequently. And,
the dog loves it.
Yeah, she sets her off barking. It's a dual redundant alarm system. The alarm goes off, then the dog goes off. So anyway, but we never could figure this out. So then one night, I guess it's been about a year and a half ago, maybe 2. Of course, Mirror's inside. We're starting to wonder about the mirror. Jacob, which is our second oldest stepson, my second oldest stepson, my wife's second oldest son, he's in one of the other rooms, staying all night. And about 2 a.m.
It's directly across from us.
Yeah, directly across. It's
our closet attaches to his closet.
Yep, yeah. And they're right there. We're actually...
This is kind of important information, the closet.
Oh, yeah, because it's very, very important. So, Shethard went to sleep, and it's about 2 a.m, and I'm watching, YouTube videos, and I can't go to sleep.
Right,
yeah, doing something to amuse myself at the time. And all of a sudden, I hear 3 distinct knocks. Tap, tap, tap. And, I thought... and my stepson loves to play PlayStation, and you can hear him from wherever you're at in the house. GD zombies, kill the zombies, kill. And we mock him all the time. He can't hear us because he has headphones on. And, and we always, jokingly do that.
I hope he doesn't listen to this.
Yeah, if he does, he'll know we mock him all the time now. But anyway, even his siblings mock him.
Yes,
and
they
he
do.
screams and yells and jumps all over. He's very animated. And we don't pay him a lot of mind. Now, I have told him that starting at midnight, you have to shut that stuff down because me and Mom's sleeping, the kids are sleeping. Find something quiet to do. Kill quieter zombies or something. I don't know. But,
Right. So this is 3 in the morning.
Yeah, 3 in the morning.
He
He shouldn't
off
be-
his computer, off
He
the
should
game.
be doing something quiet.
And
Yeah.
usually he goes to bed early, but he'll get up in the middle of the night and he'll eat like taco chips and hot sauce and then go back to bed. Yeah, now I'll tell you what, I've got a...
He won't be doing that when he's older.
No.
No.
I got the constitution of a goat, but I can't do that anymore. That would kill me. But he'll get up and then and it's really creepy because sometimes he wears a hooded sweatshirt, and he'll have the hood way down over and he'll sit at the table. I can see him in the camera. But anyway, so I assume, he's knocking. I'm almost ready to yell, hey, get to bed. And, usually by now he's listening to music on his phone. So I didn't pay attention to it. So next morning, I'm usually the first guy up. And actually, he beat me up, and I got up, and he fired up the coffee pot for us, and he was fixing himself a cup of coffee. And I think he's probably about 16. And so we're sitting there, and he looks at me, and he says, hey, and I think he thought maybe we were having sex or something. He was trying to be real cautious about it. He said, why were you guys knocking, on the closet last night? And the best line ever, I looked at him, I go, that wasn't you? His face dropped. His eyes get real big. He goes, you're messing with me, right? Because I love to tease the kids. I tease them all the time. I go, nope, not this time. I thought that was you knocking. He says, no, it came from my closet. I go, yeah, that's where it came from on our side. Our closets butt up to each other. I said, that's where it came from our side. He said, did you open it up? I go, no, I thought it was you. I didn't have a need to. I said, I was going to yell at you to go to bed. He said, I was laying there listening to music with my headphones on. He said, it was loud enough I heard it through my headphones. And I looked at him, I said, well, it's got to be the Shadow Man. We nicknamed him the Shadow Man.
Right.
And so we just, and it's so funny now because for a couple of days, I think he actually didn't come over one weekend because he just
it kind of freaked
scared
him
him.
out.
It kind of freaked him out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and so now, and in the last
We
year-
also joked that it was Sasquatch.
Oh, yeah. I told him, I said, well, you can't mess with Sasquatch. And we just kind of laughed about it. But the odd
Didn't
thing...
he say something knocked on his window one time?
Yeah, one time he said something knocked on the window. And the funny thing is, it was in his bedroom, he has a set of double windows and a single window. The single window goes to the backyard, but the double windows go to a screened-in porch. And the porch is on camera.
Oh,
we can see all of it. So if someone knocks on that window, they have to be in there. Well, there's also... you guessed it, a motion detector in there that tells me someone walks into that patio, and it's locked. Nobody can get in from the outside unless I let them in.
They have to break it.
They'd have to break it to get in. And so nothing went off, but he claimed someone knocked on those windows. Now, the windows are a little harder to knock on because they have screens in the lower end. You'd have to reach up to the top and knock on the storm glass. But yeah, he swore up and down someone that same night knocked on his window.
So it's not like a branch could have knocked into it because
No.
it's backed up on the sunroom.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
nothing
On the
there.
porch.
And the nearest thing to it's a ceiling fan. That's a good 2 foot off, and it would have to come unglued. The blades would or unscrewed to hit the window. So we never could find anything. We went out there, couldn't see anything, never could figure out what happened. We looked at the next day, and it just kind of unnerved him to the point that he took a couple weeks before he came back, I think, over it. But when I sit at night, and a lot of times once our kids, they stay with my wife's ex so that they can attend the school district. Because school district we're in is not near as good as where they're at. So most of the time, every other weekend, they're here. But other than that, it's just me, Heather, the dog, and the cat. So when we watch TV, I sit there on my little area of the sofa that I determined to be my throne, and Heather will snuggle up next to me, or she'll sit down at the other end of the couch. But I can look clear down the hallway, and normally we leave the rooms open, and that spare room where Jacob was at, when I look into that room, I can see into a little bit of it, and I can see there's one nightstand, and there's a double bed in there, and it had a Sony clock on it forever, and the clock finally went bad, and we threw it away. But I could be watching TV and see something out of my corner of my eye pass through that doorway there to the closet. It usually goes from the right to the left. It's happened, I would say, at least 25 times I've seen it. A couple times it was so vivid I rushed up there to immediately engage the intruder, only to find out there was no intruder. And,
There's
the room was empty.
nobody there.
And she's watched me do it a couple times. Now, I now try to do it very, very dignified, so it doesn't look like I'm losing my mind. And I get up casually and in a tactical way, and I will move down the hallway to attack whatever's in the other door. Never anything there except for baskets of clothes we have yet to fold. So usually we use that bed to set them on till we fold them. And, but it's really odd. These things have got going. And then during some of the meetings, you'll remember this, we had 2 previous members, and one of them in particular must have been more sensitive than others, and she would sit in a chair that she could look to her right and look all the way down the hall, same as I could. Several times she's seen something moving, and once she was exiting, saw something it looked like came out of the second bathroom, which is our master bath, and came across the hall and darted into the wall. And, there's been other people that have come here that have said they have seen things. Even Andrew, I think, told me one time, which he's kind of like me, he's not very sensitive to these things, but he said he'd seen something out of the corner of his eye that was just a bit
I've
odd.
been looking because you let me
I wanted
sit.
to ask you, yeah.
You let me sit in your seat because you conduct the meeting from back behind.
Yep.
So I get to sit in the designated seat, and I continually watch down the hallway because I am on the lookout for this.
If you haven't seen it, it's coming. At some point, it will happen. Yeah, it's just really odd. And so anyway, fast forward last year. Now, we go to numerous Paracons, and as you know from the advertisement, we'll be at the Fort Wayne Paracon this year.
Absolutely, looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I can't wait. This should be a lot of fun. And we will be at the Michigan Paracon.
Yep.
For the guys and the Hoopers up there that run the group, we enjoy it. We enjoy going every year. If you're going to the Michigan Paracon, you'll see us in our black shirts that say Spirit Indiana. We'll be walking around. Feel free to stop and talk to us. We know a lot of the people up there. We have a good time. And so anyway, they have at Paracons, for those who are not familiar, we actually have a episode on Paracons coming up, but they have classes and they have different things that go on. So one of the things that we truly enjoy is going to some of the training classes. And so anyway, we go to these training classes, and one of them in particular that we went to, go ahead.
No, good.
Oh, no. For everybody who wants to know, we sit around here while we're broadcasting. A lot of times we eat candy, and I have pickle flavored candy. It actually exists, believe it or not.
It's very good.
Yeah, it actually tastes just like a pickle. That's why I told her, go ahead and put the piece in your mouth.
It comes from Nashville, Indiana, and it's very good.
I can't tell you the candy store. I would advertise for them, but I can't remember what it is. It's off a side street there, off the main circle, and we're going to have to find the name of that. But yeah, we actually enjoy. So I keep a thing of pickle candy up here, and I think there's maybe some ginger in there too. But yeah, I love those. I love hard candy. It's just, for me, being diabetic, I can only have so much sugar, and it's a very low content of sugar. But anyway, so we go to the Paracons, and I'm not against, a lot of people think I'm against psychics. I am not against psychics. It's not in our methodology in Spirit to use psychics, and we don't, because people go, why? And I said, well, you can't calibrate them. It's not like an EMF detector or K2 meter or, a Mel meter. I can't take them out and make that work. I can't. So I have to have some way of being able to, and the only way they do psychics is, it's the same way they randomize bets in Vegas. They look at how many times they're right, how many times they're wrong, and they give you a percentile as to, how accurate they are. And we can't do that. We need a more exact science in this business. First of all, I think Grover Krantz in the cryptozoology field said it really well as far as how science looks at our pseudoscience. He said if we killed a Bigfoot and drugged the body to every university, to every meeting, they would still ask for DNA proof afterwards. And that's exactly it. No matter what we do, it's hard enough anyway. So we try to stay with very, very controllable controls in anything we use. So we don't use psychics. But I didn't say I don't believe in them. I didn't say they didn't exist. I think some are more accurate than others, but I don't go to them. Now, Heather, on the other end, likes to go to these things.
He doesn't want them to pry.
Yeah, okay. That the whole thing is I don't want them in my head.
Yeah, that's exactly what he doesn't
I don't want them in my head. Yeah, that's the key. And, I'll be honest with you, the one that scares me the worst is coffee, chipped coffee. Because I always think when he looks at me, he gives me an odd look when he looks at me. And
it's because he knows.
Yeah, and that, it always worries me a little bit about, if he's in my head a little. I guess that's always been the way of it. And, I was laughing. I think it was Russell Court I was talking to when we were up there. I said something about that's the reason why, and he says, that's all right, my head's real X-rated. They won't stay there very long. And I go, yeah, well, that might be too. I said, I don't know, but it just, chip
that's
coffee.
How you keep them out, just... think about stuff that
Chip
they
Coffee
don't want to see
and Cindy Kranz are probably the two that worry me the most.
Cindy Kaza. Cindy Kaza is.
Oh, yeah. She
she's good.
She just gives you that look, and it's a real subtle content look, and it always makes me wonder if she's in my head. So anyway, I don't usually go to these. Now, I go to a lot of different seminars, and we all do. So Heather usually goes. Andrew likes to go. Jennifer likes to go. So I'll let you take it from here. Explain to them what seminar you're at.
Okay, so me and Jennifer and our other two former teammates went to a gallery reading with Patty Negri. She's a very lovely lady.
She is. And I'm really sorry about the whole phone thing. Anyway.
That's another story for another day. And she's a psychic. She works with Hollywood, a lot of Hollywood elites. But anyway, she's doing a gallery reading. It was very small. There's maybe 60 people tops.
Yeah.
And this one, she didn't even... You just went up to the mic and, basically you just said your name, who you're trying to contact, and a question. So I went up, I gave her my name, who I was trying to contact, which was my mom, and my question. And
that was it. That was it.
That's all the information I gave.
Now, we should say your mother obviously is passed.
Yeah, my mother's passed. She passed in 2005, which is 18 years ago.
And her name was Maria.
Maria. My name is Heather. I was like, my name's Heather. I'm trying to contact my mom, Maria. And I gave her my question. And so...
What was your question? Would you rather not say?
I'd rather not say.
Okay, go ahead then.
So, she's talking, and a lot of things she was talking about didn't really fit my mom.
Yeah, they didn't fit Heather's mom. But I will say, from a person who doesn't know Heather's mom, Patty kept saying Sound of Music, Sound of Music.
Yeah, she said my mom's favorite movie was The Sound of Music. Now, nobody here knows my mom, but me. My mom was a retired Marine. She was an E8, the second highest rank you can achieve as an enlisted person in the Marine Corps.
And just so you know, her dad Roy achieved the highest E9. Anyway,
so just pretty hardcore lady, until
Sound of Music would not be her.
No, she liked.
Wouldn't be your first choice.
She liked Charles Bronson, Clint Eastwood, John Wayne. War movies, cowboy movies,
right.
Death Wish.
Right. But for me, that might be the trigger that she was getting her name, Maria, that's the only connection I could do. That was the connection she was getting. That's the only thing I could think of
from The Sound of Music was, the character
But it
Maria.
had you really thrown off, very confused.
It was like Sound of Music.
No way.
And so
she answered your question.
And then she answered my question, and I was like, okay, thank you, because I was still really confused. I was like, oh, all right.
You could see her face was like, all right, well, I guess maybe. I'm not so sure about this right now.
And so I'm turning around, going back to my seat, which is about one row away from the microphone. Yeah. And Jennifer and the other ladies were sitting in there. And Patty goes, oh, by the way. I turned back around and I was like, yes. And she goes, you have an active mirror in your house. And all of us were like, what?
Heather looked back at me and her eyes were like saucers and my mouth was hanging open and I went, oh my gosh. Yeah,
there's no way she could have knew we owned the mirror.
I never said anything. During the whole conversation about my mother, I never said anything about a mirror. I never said anything mirror-like anything.
No.
So she goes, oh, by the way, you have an active mirror in your house, and
Andrew wasn't with you guys.
No, he had to take some kind of phone call. Yeah. Business came up. Yeah. He didn't make it till. I don't even think he ever made it.
Yeah. No, he did. He came in after that, and we were like, oh my God, you will not believe it.
At the very, very end, he came in. Anyway, she says that. I was like, yeah, I do. Yeah.
And your mother comes through it.
And she goes, your mother comes through it. She uses it as a portal. Yeah. I was like,
oh my God, we were completely stunned.
And then she goes, yeah. She comes and she pulls your hair, and sometimes you smell smoke, and she says these things, and she goes, what you need to do, you got rings from your mom too, right? I was like, what? Yeah. Because I never said anything about any of the jewelry or anything that I inherited.
But I mean, that could be normal.
But a lot of people have jewelry or rings.
And
But
these
mirror,
these are
the mirror,
expensive
but-
rings. Yeah, they're nice ones. We
But I
actually have them
never
praised.
specifically,
and of course, we have mirrors.
Yeah.
But that's not the point. The point is, we have an active
yeah.
mirror
But
Yeah.
she said
that
you
we already
have
knew about.
an
Yeah.
active mirror, and she's like, "What you need to do is take those rings and sit in front of it sometime." I was like, okay. I was like, really?
Psychomantrum.
And she sat down and
Any of
she
them.
was
So
just
shocked.
like,
Yeah.
shell shock.
I was
Yeah.
like, okay, thank you. I was like, because my voice went up really, like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it did. Yeah.
I was like, yes, thank you, thank you. Then I went sat down, and it was just, I don't even remember anybody else after that,
Nope.
Yeah.
because I was just, oh my gosh,
That was amazing.
Yeah, and that's the first time I think we really said, okay, that's where it's coming from. The mirror is a portal.
Yeah.
Because if it's a portal for Maria, it's also a portal for anybody else. And jokingly, I looked at her and I said, if Dad comes through, Dad, bring the lotto numbers when you come. Please, bring them, I could use that. And, we laugh about it. And now, because we're very active in parapsychology and we do all these cases, our house, about every room has an active salt lamp in it, okay? And then, there's a lot of ways to protect yourself, and certainly salt lamps help cleanse the air and block the ability of spirits to come around. We advise that a lot of times if people are having instances where they're being attacked or feel like they're being awoken by ghosts, to put those in their bedroom, because a lot of times and run them 24/7. So first thing I told Heather was, I said, we gotta get home and turn the salt lamp off and let your mother out. And everybody around, I guess it didn't come out the way I planned it.
No.
Yeah. But, it sounded like we were keeping her in a closet or something, but yeah, we keep those up. And then, of course, I and Tim Shaw have talked numerous times and went through one of his seminars, and there's other ways of doing it, but the salt lamps help. So anywhere you go in our house, you'll find a lit salt lamp. So on the little marble stand, we have a very large salt lamp, and then we have a railroad spike that's made out of pig iron, and it's sitting there. And we keep a white candle there. And Heather has tried a psychomantrium to do that, and didn't have any results. We didn't, but there
Nothing
again,
happened.
I think you have to do it at a time when she's coming through. And oddly enough, now this takes us into another part. Of course, I and Heather both have had COVID. We actually have had regular COVID twice, and then she's had I had the Delta, and you had the Omicron, and so we've had it total 3 times. So, and when I first had it, this before the vaccines came out and everything, and whether you're a vacciner or a non-vacciner doesn't really matter. But the point of the matter is it was in the early stages, and we both caught it and spent like 2.5, 3 months recovering. And one thing that I lost to this day and still never got back is my smell. Now, she got her smell back. She lost about a month. She lost it in her taste. I lost my taste and smell. Got my taste back for the most part, but smell, no. And I have these, what I call, of all things, ghost smells. It's kind of like, when someone loses a limb, they have a ghost limb effect. Well, I'll be sitting somewhere, and of course, the biggest risk to this is everyone always says if you're having a stroke, you'll smell burning toast. Well, I've never smelled burning toast, but I swear to God, I don't know how many times I can tell you, I smell a cigarette just recently being lit. And I have a lung condition, and I don't get around smokers. And I used to be a smoker. When I say that, I never smoked cigarettes. I smoked cigars, very expensive cigars. I enjoyed them immensely, and I had to let them go. When I was diagnosed with obstructive lung disease, I had to turn around and say, okay, no more. And I gave those to a friend of mine because I couldn't use them any longer. But I tell you what, I don't know how many times, it's been at least 24 times in the last year and a half, that I have smelt just like somebody lit a cigarette. And then a couple of times now, you've smelled it, right?
Yeah, faintly, not quite as strong as you do.
Oh, I smell just like I'm standing right next to somebody. And it smells like, now, did your mother use a lighter or a match?
A lighter.
Okay. And see, you can almost pick up a little of that butane smell. Like when someone lights off a cheap Bic or something, you can pick that up. And it just, that, it's nothing uncommon. Now, my dad never smoked. Now he did, I understand, when I was very young, before I was born. He quit, or right after I was born, he quit. But, the only thing I always look for, Old Spice, because that was the shaving lotion of his, calling, and that was what he wanted to wear. And so I always look for that, but I've never smelled it. But I have smelt cigarette smoke numerous times. So, and I don't know, we don't know what waits for us on the other side. And
Maybe
no one
she
knows.
likes you.
That could be, or maybe she's checking up, And I think what we may have to do is to run a psychomantra when we smell the smoke.
Yeah, when you smell that, then trigger, okay, let's try and
see if it comes through.
do a
Because we
session.
turn all the salt lamps off, that allows, and the other risk is we have to talk about, what else can
What
come
else
through?
are we letting in?
Yeah.
Yeah, you never know what you're letting in. And
Right.
I mean, we're talking about the Bela Lugosi legend of the mirror. He was afraid he let other things in. And sometimes that is a risk. That's the reason we have the salt lamp on. Now, whether it stops there or not, I don't know. We still have things going on, but they're not real high energy things. So maybe the salt lamps keep bad things from coming through, but allow good spirits to walk on through. Now, of course, Heather's background is Hispanic. And so we do practice every October. We do
Dia de los Muertos.
the Day of the Dead, and we put an altar up. And I think maybe this year we should put the altar at the mirror, because part of the altars for the Day of the Dead is to have a mirror for them to come through. And I think it might be better to put it appropriate, more effective is what I was thinking. More effective, more useful to put them there, because we might get more reaction. So we're going to definitely be doing some experiments for that. So. Well, at this point, I think we're about to the end of this episode.
Yeah,
It's been fun.
So. Yeah.
I think it really has. Anybody got anything they'd like to add before we get off of here?
I don't think so.
No? Okay, well, I'll tell you what, folks. Thank you for listening. That we had a great time tonight. This has been fantastic, actually. It's good subject matter. This is the conclusion for tonight's episode of Ghost to Ghost. We hope you all enjoyed this evening's episode. The episode of Ghost to Ghost was written by myself, Chief Lawson, and again, thank you for listening. All right, listeners, welcome to Ghost Story of the Day. Today's presenter will be Jennifer Verne, our research manager on Spirit.
Today's ghost story of the day was going to be about Myrtle's plantation, but upon reading, I found several inaccuracies in that story. So, being the historian that I am, I'm not going to go with that. So we're going to go with a local story from Vevey, Indiana. It's from Haunted Hoosier Trails, A Guide to Indiana's Famous Folklore and Spooky Sites by Wanda Lou Willis. A Gentle Presence. Benjamin Franklin Schneck, son of a wealthy farmer and owner of the Vevey Weekly News, built his 35-room mansion in 1874. The impressive house, located at 206 West Turnpike Street, with its 4-storied tower, 4 porches, 7 balconies, 8 chimneys, and numerous windows, was and is an architectural marvel. Schneck died just 2 years after moving into his newly furnished mansion. The house was not just representative of an 1870s Norman Revival castle, it came complete with a gentle presence from the past that has been felt or experienced by some of the Fisher's guests. This was not surprising to many of Vevey citizens who had heard the tragic story of 2 young lovers who once lived on the site before the mansion was built. Approximately 10 to 15 years prior to the construction of the Schneck Mansion, and the site that contained a small house of a young girl and her lover, a Civil War soldier. Many of the citizens were very concerned with his situation. Living together without the benefit of clergy was not proper in Victorian society. One night the house caught fire. By the time the fire brigade could be formed and rushed to the scene, the house was completely engulfed in flames. There was nothing that could be done for the couple trapped in the house. As the brigade fought to keep the flames from spreading, people began speculating as to the origin of the fire. A few watching the horrible destruction may have likened it to the flames of hell consuming the sinners. Others wept and wondered, was it an accident? Is the present guests experienced the young girl who died with her lover in that fire so long ago? Oddly, women don't see the girl. Only men report seeing a young girl out of the corner of their eyes. When they turn to look, the apparition is gone. Sometimes she's seen walking into a room, then the room is found empty. Lisa Fisher, one of the current owners, has been told by some of her male guests that they've actually felt a gentle kiss on the cheek when they've been alone. The women haven't seen anything or had any contact. They do report feeling that they are not alone. Mrs. Fisher has photographed every room in the house except the tower room. She can't explain it, but every time she attempts to take a picture, her camera refuses to work, or if it does, the film does not develop. A friend of the Fishers was visiting one evening when a loud crashing sound came from upstairs. Mrs. Fisher was undisturbed by the sound, explaining it was the other guest. The Fisher family has become familiar with these various activities attributed to the presence that they share with their house.
Thanks for listening to Ghost to Ghost. Again, I'm your host, Chief Lawson. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats on the 15th and 30th of the month at midnight. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, maybe have a question or subject you'd like to ask about on air or be used on the show, please email us at ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com, ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com. I want to thank my production staff on Spirit, Jennifer Verne, our research manager and our producer, and Heather Lawson, our trainer on Spirit and our podcast director, for helping make these podcasts possible. My chief of staff, Andrew Brooks, for his guidance and help on the scripts, and everyone else involved. Thank you so much. See you next time. Until then, stay safe and remember the truth is out there. Good night. Ghost to Ghost podcast and its contents is the property of Spirit Paranormal Ltd., all rights reserved. We welcome you to download and play the podcast and share with others for personal use. You may not, except with written permission, use or distribute its contents for commercial use. Spirit Indiana Paranormal, covering the Hoosier State since 2002, Indy's oldest parapsychology investigation group. If you're experiencing what you believe to be paranormal issues, reach out to us for help at www.spiritindiana.com or call our hotline at 317-883-9103. Again, that is www.spiritindiana.com or our hotline at 317-883-9103. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself and the ones you love, and be safe out there.